The Galactic Union had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. 7 ancient species had built an empire that stretched across 1,000,000 worlds. They had seen wars and plagues and disasters. They had survived everything. They believed nothing could threaten them. They were wrong. Admiral Quan stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Dawn of Sol. She was 53 years old. With gray streaks in her black hair and eyes that had seen too many battles, the message on her screen made her blood run cold. The Morai homeworld was burning. The Morai were one of the oldest species in the Union. They were tall and graceful. With silver skin and voices like music, they had looked down on humans since Earth joined the Union 200 years ago. They called humans children and barbarians. They said humanity was too young, too violent, too primitive to understand the ways of civilized species. Now their cities were ashdot. Quan read the report 3 times. A new species had emerged from the dark regions beyond charted space. They called themselves nothing. They had no name because they had no individuals. They were a swarm, a hive mind. Billions of creatures thinking with one terrible purpose. The Union scientists named them the Veth. The Veth did not talk. They did not negotiate. They did not want territory, or resources, or slaves. They wanted only one thing: to consume. They ate worlds the way fire eats paper. They landed on planets and stripped them bare. They killed everything that moved and used the organic matter to make more of themselves. In 3 months, they had destroyed 47 worlds. Commander Hannah brought the reconnaissance reports to Quan's quarters that night. Hannah was young, only 32, but she was the best scout pilot in the fleet. She had flown into Veth-controlled space and returned alive. Not many could say that. "How bad is it?" Quan asked. Hannah placed the data chip on the desk. Her hands were shaking. "Worse than the reports say. The Morai fleet is gone. Not defeated. Gone. 2,000 ships destroyed in 6 hours." Guan closed her eyes. The Morai fleet had been the largest in the Union. If they could not stop the Veth, who could? "The Torai are already talking about surrender," Hannah continued. "The Kel are moving their population to the core worlds. Everyone is running. In the Union Council. They meet tomorrow. Ambassador Wu Jian asked me to tell you something." Hannah paused. "He said humanity needs to be ready." Quan understood. While the ancient species argued and fled, someone would have to fight. Someone would have to stand between the Veth and the trillions of innocent lives in the inner systems. Someone would have to hold the line. It would be humanity. The next day, Quan watched the council meeting on a live feed from Earth Command. The great chamber on Station Prime was filled with representatives from all 7 elder species. They sat in floating chairs arranged in a circle, their translators humming as they spoke. The Torai representative spoke first. He was a massive creature, like a bear made of stone, with 6 arms and eyes that glowed yellow. His voice rumbled through the chamber. "We must consider surrender. The Veth cannot be defeated. Every fleet that faces them is destroyed. We must find a way to communicate, to negotiate. Perhaps we can offer them uninhabited worlds. Perhaps we can satisfy their hunger," the Kel representative agreed. She was small and insect-like, with wings that buzzed when she was nervous. "Retreat is logical. We save what we can. We abandon the outer systems and fortify the core. Let the Veth have the frontier. In time, they may move on." Other species nodded. They were afraid. Quan could see it in their body language, in the way they avoided looking at the screens showing the Veth advance. These were ancient beings who had ruled the galaxy for longer than humanity had existed, and they were terrified. Then Ambassador Wu Jin stood. He was an old man, 70 years, with a lined face and white hair. He had served Earth for 40 years, first as a soldier, then as a diplomat. He walked slowly to the center of the chamber, his simple gray suit a stark contrast to the elaborate robes of the alien representatives. "No," he said. The chamber went silent. "What did you say?" The Torai representative asked. "I said no." Wu Jin's voice was calm, but firm. "Humanity will not surrender. Humanity will not retreat. The Veth are coming, and someone must stop them. If the great elder species are too afraid to fight, then we will fight alone. The Morai representative laughed. It was a cold, bitter sound. You, humanity. You have been part of this union for barely 2 centuries. You are children playing with toys. Your fleet is small. Your species is young. What can you possibly do against the Veth? Wu Jin smiled. It was not a happy smile. We can die trying. And perhaps, while we die, you will remember what courage looks like. He turned and walked out of the chamber. That night, Earth Command sent orders to every human ship in the galaxy. They were simple orders, just 3 words. Hold the line. Admiral Kwan read the orders on her bridge. Around her, officers worked at their stations, preparing the fleet for war. Through the viewport, she could see other human ships forming up cruisers and destroyers, carriers and frigates. 800 ships in total. Not enough. Not nearly enough, but they were all humanity had. Hannah stood beside her. The elder species think we are fools. Perhaps we are, Kwan said. But fools have won wars before, and I would rather die a fool than live a coward. She activated the fleet-wide communication channel. Every human ship would hear her words. This is Admiral Kwan. You all know why we are here. The Veth are coming. The other species have chosen to run. We have chosen to fight. I will not lie to you. Many of us will die. Perhaps all of us. But we fight for something greater than ourselves. We fight for Earth. We fight for the billions of innocent people who cannot fight for themselves. We fight because someone must. She paused, looking at the stars. Hold the line. That is our mission. That is our purpose. And that is what we will do until our last ship burns and our last soldier falls. Today, the galaxy learns what humanity is made of. She cut the channel in the darkness of space. 800 ships turned toward the coming storm, the evacuation of the outer. Systems began 3 days after the council meeting. Thousands of ships from the elder species fled toward the galactic core. They carried billions of refugees, leaving behind worlds that had been home to their kind for millennia. Admiral Kwan watched them pass. Some of the alien captains sent messages of sympathy. Others sent warnings. A few sent nothing at all, too ashamed to speak to the humans who remained. General Tay contacted her from Earth's command. He was a serious man with a scar across his face from an old war. His voice was heavy with the weight of what he was about to say. We have chosen our ground, he said. The reach of Sora. It is a narrow corridor of space between 2 nebulae. The only passage to the inner systems. If the Veth want to reach the core worlds, they must come through there. Kwan studied the star maps. The reach was perfect for defense. The nebulae on either side were filled with radiation and asteroid fields. No fleet could pass through them. Any attack would have to come straight down the corridor. How long do we have? She asked. 6 days? Maybe 7. 6 days to prepare for the end of the world. Captain Jeho received his orders on the bridge of the battleship Unyielding. He was a quiet man, 40 years old, with hands that never shook and eyes that never looked away. His crew trusted him completely. We hold position at the front of the corridor, he told his officers. We will be the first to face the Veth, the first to die, probably. But every hour we hold is another hour for the evacuation ships to escape. His first officer, a woman named Yuna, looked at the crew roster. We have 400 people on this ship, families back on Earth, children who will grow up without parents. I know. Jeho's voice was soft. I have a daughter. She is 7 years old. She likes to draw pictures of starships. He paused. But if we do not hold here, there will be no Earth for her to grow up on. Some things are more important than going home. Yuna nodded. She understood. They all understood. On the colony world of Hatter 7, Lieutenant Nari watched the civilian evacuation with growing dread. 2 million people lived on this planet. They had built cities and farms and schools over 3 generations. Now they had to leave everything behind, but the evacuation ships were too few and too slow. How long until the Veth arrive? She asked her sergeant. 4 days? Maybe 5? We can get about half the civilians out by then. half 1 million people would be left behind. Nari made a decision. She gathered every soldier she could, find regular troops, reservists, even retired veterans who could still hold a weapon. 4,000 in total. Not an army. Barely a defense force. She stood before them in the main square of the capital city. The evacuation ships cannot take everyone, she said. 1 million people will still be here when the Veth come. Our job is to protect them. Our job is to buy time. She looked at their faces, young and old, scared and determined. I will not lie to you. This is probably a fight we cannot win. But every hour we hold, more people escape. Every hour matters. Every life matters. A young soldier raised his hand. What if the ships never come? Then we die protecting innocent people. I can think of worse ways to go. No one else asks questions. In space, the alien fleets continued their retreat. They passed the human positions without stopping, without looking back. A Tarai commander sent a message to Captain Jiho as his massive warship flew by. You cannot win, the alien said. His stone face showed something that might have been pity. Your species is too young to understand. The Veth have destroyed civilizations older than your entire world. Run while you can. Save yourselves. Jiho read the message on his screen. He thought about his daughter. He thought about the people on Hador 7 waiting for evacuation. He thought about Ambassador Wu Jin standing alone in the council chamber. Saying no, he did not reply to the Tauri. There was nothing to say, Commander. Hannah flew reconnaissance missions into Veth-controlled space. Each time she returned with worse news. The swarm was growing. Every world they consumed made them stronger. Every species they destroyed added to their numbers. She reported to Admiral Quan. They have over 10,000 ships now. Maybe more. It is hard to count them. They do not fly in formations like normal fleets. They move like a swarm of insects, constantly shifting, constantly hungry. 10,000 against 800, Quan said. Yes. Quan smiled grimly. I have faced worse odds. Hannah knew she was lying. No one had faced worse odds. This was a battle humanity could not win. But winning was not the point. Surviving was not the point. The point was to give others a chance to survive. That was what it meant to hold the line. On the 5th day, the Veth appeared at the edge of the reach of Sora. Their ships were black and twisted, made of organic material that seemed to pulse with dark life. They did not look like machines. They looked like living nightmares. Admiral Quan stood on her bridge and watched them come. 10,000 ships, maybe more. An endless swarm filling the stars like a plague. All ships, battle stations, she said calmly. This is what we trained for. This is what we were born for. Today, we show the galaxy what humans can do. On the unyielding, Captain Jiho looked at his crew. They were afraid. He could see it in their eyes. But they were also ready. No retreat, he said. No surrender. Hold the line. On Hador 7, Lieutenant Nari watched the sky darken as Veth ships entered orbit. The evacuation was not complete. 800,000 civilians were still on the planet. 800,000 people who were counting on her. She picked up her rifle. They are coming, her sergeant said. Then we will meet them. The first Veth ship opened fire. The battle had begun. And across the galaxy, the elder species watched from their safe retreats. They watched the tiny human fleet face the endless swarm. They watched with disbelief and something that might have been shame. The humans were not running. The humans were fighting. The battle lasted 37 days. On the first day, the Veth attacked in waves. Their ships crashed against the human defensive line like water against rocks. Admiral Quan commanded from the dawn of Sol, her voice calm as she directed the fleet through the chaos. The Veth fought without tactics. They simply attacked, over and over, relying on numbers to overwhelm their enemies. It had always worked before. Every species they had faced tried to fight and organize formations. Every species broke when the swarm became too large to handle. But humans did not fight like other species. Break formation, Quan ordered. All ships, Independent action. Hit them and move. Never stay in one place. The human captains understood. They scattered their ships across the corridor, attacking from different angles, retreating before the Veth could respond, then attacking again. It was chaos. Beautiful, deadly chaos. The Veth hive mind could not adapt. They thought as one, which meant they could not handle enemies who thought as individuals. When a human captain made a surprising move, the swarm hesitated. That hesitation cost them ships. On the 5th day, Captain Hean of the cruiser Last Light saw an opportunity. A Veth command carrier sat at the center of their formation, coordinating the swarm. If he could destroy it, the Veth would lose coordination for hours. The carrier was surrounded by hundreds of enemy ships. There was no way to attack it and survive. Hean called his crew to the bridge. "I need volunteers," he said. "What I am about to do will probably kill us all. Anyone who wants to leave, I will not blame you. Take the escape pods. No shame in surviving." No one moved. "Very well," Hean smiled. "It has been an honor serving with you." The Last Light accelerated to maximum speed. It flew straight through the Veth formation, weapons firing in all directions. Enemy ships exploded around it. Hits struck the hull, tearing through armor and killing crew members. But the Last Light kept going. Hean transmitted one final message to his daughter on Earth. "I love you. Tell them we did not kneel." The Last Light crashed into the command carrier at full speed. The explosion was visible from 1,000 kilometers away. For 3 hours, the Veth swarm fell into confusion. They attacked each other. They flew in circles. They did not know what to do without their command node telling them. The human fleet used those 3 hours to destroy 400 enemy ships. On Hatter 7. Lieutenant Nari fought a different kind of battle. The Veth ground forces were nightmares made flesh. They were insect-like creatures, each one the size of a large dog, with claws that could tear through metal and jaws that could bite through bone. They came in endless waves, crawling over walls, bursting from underground, falling from the sky. Nari had 4,000 soldiers. The Veth had over 100,000. "Hold the walls," she ordered. "Every minute we fight, more civilians escape." Her troops fought with everything they had. When their guns ran out of ammunition, they used knives. When their knives broke, they used rocks. When there was nothing left, they used their fists. Sergeant Park held a section of wall for 6 hours, with only 12 soldiers. When reinforcements finally reached him, 3 of his people were still alive. They had killed over 200 Veth. Private soon ran through enemy fire to rescue wounded civilians trapped in a collapsed building. She carried 8 children to safety before a Veth claw caught her leg. She kept going, dragging herself with her arms until medics found her. The city burned around them. Buildings fell. Streets became rivers of ash and blood, but the evacuation continued. Every hour, more ships arrived. Every hour, more civilians escaped in space. The battle raged on. Pilot Mingji led the Black Wolves, a fighter squadron that became legend during those 37 days. They flew small, fast ships that hid in asteroid fields and struck without warning. They destroyed supply ships and communication relays. They made the Veth afraid to send ships anywhere alone. Minji flew 72 missions. She slept in her cockpit between fights. She ate nutrient paste because there was no time for real food. She lost 11 pilots' friends she had trained with, laughed with, loved. She kept flying. "They think we are just pests," she told her remaining pilots. "Insects to be swatted. Let us show them what insects can do." On the 20th day, the Dawn of Sol took heavy damage. A Veth ram ship struck the port side, killing 300 crew members. Admiral Kwan was on the bridge when the explosion happened. A piece of metal hit her shoulder, breaking bone and tearing muscle. She refused to leave her post. "Bandage it," she told the medic. "I will rest when we are dead." She continued to command the fleet for 17 more days. On the 30th day, only 300 human ships remained. They had destroyed over 4,000 vessels. An impossible number. A miracle of tactics and courage and sheer stubborn refusal to die. But the Veth still had 6,000 ships, and they were learning. Slowly, painfully, their hive mind was adapting to human tactics. On Hador 7, Lieutenant Nari received a message from orbit. Evacuation ships were finally arriving in force, but she only had 600 soldiers left. 600 people against a Veth army that now numbered in the hundreds of thousands. Hold for 2 more days, the message said. 2 more days, and everyone can escape. 2 days. 48 hours. An eternity. Nari looked at her soldiers. They were exhausted, wounded, broken in body and spirit. But they were still standing. 2 more days, she said. Can you give me 2 more days? A young soldier, barely 19 years old, lifted his rifle. His hands were shaking. His face was covered in burns and cuts, but his voice was steady. We will give you as many days as you need, Lieutenant. Around him, other soldiers nodded. They were ready to die. They had been ready since the beginning. Nari felt tears on her face. Pride and grief and love for these impossible, stubborn, wonderful humans. Then let us give them hell, she said. The Veth attacked at dawn. 600 humans stood against them, and they held. On the 38th day, Admiral Quan knew she was dying. The wound in her shoulder had become infected. The medics did what they could, but there was no time for proper treatment. No time for rest. No time for anything except the battle. She stood on the bridge of the Dawn of Sol, watching the Veth Armada on the view screen. Her ship was falling apart around her. Half the weapons were offline. The engines were damaged. The hull had so many holes that entire sections had been sealed off, but she was still fighting. Admiral Commander Hannah said through the communication channel. She was commanding the surviving fleet, now 197 ships, from an original 800. The Veth are preparing another assault. This one looks bigger than before. I think they are going to try to break through. Quan studied the enemy formation. Hannah was right. The Veth were. Gathering for a final push. Thousands of ships forming into a massive wave that would crash through the human lines and flood into the inner systems. If they broke through, trillions would die. Quan made a decision. It was the only decision she could make. The only decision that made sense. Hannah, she said, you have command of the fleet. What? Admiral, no, that is an order, Commander. Quan smiled. Her face was pale from blood loss and pain, but her eyes were clear. You are a good officer. You will hold the line. I know you will. She turned to her bridge crew. 50 people who had served with her for years. People she loved like family. All non-essential personnel. Evacuate to the escape pods. That is an order. Her first officer, a man named Junho, shook his head. Admiral, I am staying. Junho, with respect. Admiral, you cannot stop me. You need someone to help fly this ship. Oh. He smiled. Besides, my wife will kill me if I let you go alone. She always liked you better than me. The 12 crew members refused to leave. 12 people who chose to stay with their admiral at the end. The Dawn of Sol turned toward the Veth fleet. Its engines burned at maximum power, pushing the damaged ship faster and faster. Ahead, the largest Veth dreadnought sat at the center of the formation, a massive vessel. It's 3 kilometers long, pulsing with dark organic matter. The ship's communication system crackled. Hannah's voice came through, broken with emotion. Admiral, it has been an honor. The honor was mine, Hannah. Now do your job. Hold the line. Quan, cut the channel. She did not want Hannah to hear what came next. The Veth ships opened fire. Hundreds of weapons hit the Dawn of Sol. The shields failed. The armor melted. Crew members died at their stations. It's killed by explosions and radiation in the cold. It's a vacuum of space. But the ship kept going. Quan gripped her command chair as the bridge fell apart around her. Gunho was dead. Most of the crew was dead. But she could still see the view screen. She could still see the Veth dreadnought growing larger. For Earth, she whispered. The Dawn of Sol struck the dreadnought at full speed. The explosion lit up the darkness of space like a new star. Commander Hannah now, Admiral Hannah washed from her ship. Tears streamed down her face, but her voice was steady when she spoke. All ships, attack. Now, while they are confused, the human fleet launched forward. 197 ships against 6,000. Impossible odds. Certain death, but something strange was happening. Intelligence officer. Sue had been monitoring Veth communications since the battle began. They did not speak in words. They communicated through a kind of psychic connection. Thoughts and emotions passing between them like electricity. She had never been able to understand it before. Now she could.
Admiral,
she said, her voice shaking. I am receiving Veth signals. Their hive mind. It is fragmenting. What do you mean? They are confused, afraid. Sue looked up from her console, disbelief in her eyes. Admiral the Veth had never experienced this before. Every species they have fought has run or surrendered. No one has ever done what we are doing. They do not understand us. They cannot predict us, and it is breaking them. The Veth swarm was falling apart. Ships that had moved in perfect coordination were now crashing into each other. Groups broke away from the main fleet and fled into the darkness. The hive mind that had controlled billions of creatures for thousands of years was shattering under the weight of something it could not comprehend. Fear on Hadar 7. Lieutenant Nari heard the news. The evacuation was complete. 2 million civilians had escaped. Every single one. She stood in the ruins of the capital city with her remaining soldiers. Out of 4,000, fewer than 300 were still alive. They were surrounded by the bodies of Veth creatures they had killed. Mountains of dead aliens piled in the streets and buildings. The ships are waiting, her sergeant said. We can leave now. Nari looked at the sky. Veth forces were still out there, millions of them. But they were not attacking. They were pulling back, retreating toward their ships. They are afraid, she said softly. They finally understand what we are. In space, Admiral Hannah gave the order that no one expected.
Ow.
Ships, pursue. Do not let them escape. The humans were not just defending anymore. They were attacking. The prey had become the hunter. The Veth fled. For the first time in their existence as a species, they fled from an enemy. Their ships scattered in all directions, trying to escape the small, terrifying creatures who refused to die. Captain Jiho of the Unyielding led the pursuit. His ship was damaged, his crew exhausted, but they chased the Veth for 3 days. They destroyed fleeing ships. They drove the swarm further and further back. By the end, the Veth had lost over 8,000 ships. The greatest defeat in their history, and it had been delivered by a species they had dismissed as young and weak. The remaining Veth vanished into the dark regions beyond charted space. Scientists warned that they would return someday. A swarm that large could not be destroyed so easily, but they would not return soon. They needed to rebuild, to recover, and perhaps to remember. To remember the species that had taught them fear. Admiral Hannah sat alone in her quarters after the battle. She held a photograph of Admiral Kwan at a ceremony years ago, smiling, alive. We held the line, Hannah whispered. Just like you ordered. The photograph did not answer. But somewhere, Hannah hoped, Kwan was watching. They had done the impossible. Now the galaxy would have to understand. What that meant, the Galactic Union gathered at the rebuilt station of Sora's Reach 3 months after the battle. It was the first time in 12,000 years that all 7 elder species came. Together in a place chosen by someone else. They came because humanity asked them to. The station had been built on the exact spot where the Dawn of Sol had made its final stand. Human engineers had worked without rest to construct it. They wanted the galaxy to remember what happened here. They wanted everyone to see. Ambassador Wuzhen walked into the great chamber. He was older now, his white hair thinner, his steps slower. The war had aged him, but his eyes were still sharp, still burning with the same fire that had made him stand alone in this very chamber and say, "No." Representatives from every elder species filled the room. The Torai, massive and silent. The Kel, their wings folded tight against their bodies. The Morai, their silver faces unreadable. Others Tuthavin, and the Surl, and the Carrick. species that had ruled the stars. When humanity was still learning to use fire, they all stood when Wu Jin entered. He had not asked them to. Stand, they did it anyway. Wu Jin walked to the center of the chamber. Behind him, a massive view screen showed the stars, outside the same stars that had witnessed humanity's sacrifice. The same stars that had watched 800 ships face 10,000 and refused to run. I am here to read names, Wu Jin said. His voice was quiet, but it carried to every corner of the room. The names of those who gave everything so that others might live. Please, sit. This will take some time. He began to read. Admiral Quan, Captain Heian, Lieutenant. Soldiers who fell on Hatter 7, the crew of the Unyielding. The pilots of the Black Wolves. Thousands of names. Each one a person with a family, with dreams. The life that ended too soon? It took 4 hours. The alien representatives sat in silence throughout. Some of them closed their eyes. Some of them lowered their heads. The Mirai representative, who had once called humanity children, wept silver tears that fell like rain. When Wu Jin finished, he looked at the gathered species. His voice was heavy with grief and pride. You asked us once why humans fight, he said. You called us aggressive, primitive. You said we had not evolved beyond violence. You said we were too young to understand the ways of civilized species. He paused. No one spoke. We fight because some things are worth more than survival. We fight because someone has to stand between the darkness and the innocent. We fight because if we do not, who will? The Torai ambassador rose from his seat. He was the oldest being in the room, older than human civilization itself. Slowly, painfully, he lowered his massive body in a gesture that his species had not performed in 6,000 years. He bowed. Forgive us, he said. His stone voice cracked with emotion. We were fools. We called you children, but you taught us what courage means. You taught us what it means to be truly civilized. One by one, the other representatives followed. They bowed, each in the manner of their own species. Some knelt. Some touched their foreheads to the floor. Some simply lowered their heads and closed their eyes. 12,000 years of arrogance. Broken in a single moment. On Earth, the memorials rose in every city, in Seoul. They built a wall of names stretching for 3 kilometers. Every person who had died in the battle was listed there, carved in black stone that would last forever. People came from every corner of the planet to touch the names, to leave flowers to remember it in Beijing. They built a statue of Admiral Quan. She stood 50 meters tall, her bronze face looking at the stars. At her feet, the inscription read, "She held the line." In New York, children sang songs about the Black Wolves. In Tokyo, they told stories of Lieutenant Nari and her impossible defense of Hatter 7. In London and Paris and Cairo and Mumbai, people gathered to honor the dead. Captain Jiho returned to Earth after the war. His daughter ran to meet him at the spaceport, throwing her arms around him. She was still drawing pictures of starships, but now she added something new to each one, a small flag with the Earth symbol. Flying proud, Pilot Minji received the Medal of Valor, the highest honor humanity could give. She stood on the stage and accepted it without speaking. Later, alone, she visited the graves of her fallen pilots. 11 graves in a row, each one decorated with flowers. We did it, she told them. We held the line. Lieutenant Nari stayed on Hadara 7 to help rebuild. The colony had been destroyed, but the people returned. They built new cities on the ashes of the old. They planted gardens in the craters left by Veth weapons, and they named their main square after Nari. The woman who had refused to let them die, Admiral Hannah, stood on the bridge of her new flagship. The Soul's Dawn? It was bigger than the old ship, faster, stronger, but she had kept the name. She wanted to remember. A young officer approached her. Admiral, the Torai have requested to join our patrol route. They say they want to learn how we fight. Hannah smiled. It was strange being asked to teach species who had existed for millions of years. But the war had changed everything. Tell them they are welcome, she said. We will show them what we know. She looked out at the stars. Somewhere in the darkness, the Veth were waiting. They would return someday. Everyone knew it. But humanity would be ready, and this time they would not fight alone. The Galactic Union had changed. The elder species no longer saw humans as children. They saw them as equals. More than equals. They saw them as the species who had done what no one else could do. At the annual celebration of the Battle of Sora's Reach, representatives from every species gathered together. They lit candles for the fallen. They told stories of human courage. They made promises that humanity would never stand alone again. Ambassador Wujin gave the closing speech. He was very old now, his body failing, but his voice was still strong. The Veth taught us something important, he said. They taught us that the universe is not a safe place. There are monsters in the dark waiting to consume everything we love. But they also taught us something else. They taught us that monsters can be stopped, that darkness can be pushed back, that even the smallest light can hold against the night. He looked at the gathered species alien faces that had once looked at humanity with contempt. Now looking with respect and something like love. We held the line, Wujin said, and we will hold it again whenever the darkness comes. Because that is who we are. That is what humanity means. He raised his glass. To those who fell. To those who stand. To the line that will never break. Every voice in the chamber, human and alien alike, repeated his words. To the line that will never break, out in the darkness of space. Admiral Hannah stood on her bridge and looked at the stars. She thought of Admiral Kwan. She thought of Captain Hune and his final message. She thought of all the people who had given everything. They were watching. She knew. Somewhere, somehow, they were watching. We held the line, she whispered, and she smiled, because she knew that they always would.